to collecting the certifications would be what was previously in place even when RIRA was doing it. We have now strengthened those because we're going to have certain affidavits that must be signed by the individual not-for-profit corporation stating that they followed all rules, regulations, etc. of the Not-for-Profit Revitalization Act. Also, we intended on having a conflict because obviously the Revitalization Act in its entity, in its language, states that there has to be a conflict provisions in the bylaws. All right. So therefore, it's there when they sign the document that there's no conflict. Now, we are going to require even yet another statement as to that. So my point is that whether we were doing something similar before, but now we're strengthening it. The RIRA, what we're doing differently now is taking over the public participation. That's it. The public participation and the way that they're presented, the way the review of the application, the benefit to the community, and those areas. But the regulatory stuff, we're going to do anyway, no matter what. We did it before, we're going to do it now. That's not something that we would ever not,
Ever handle.
yeah.
Pardon.
So the regulatory stuff, just to remind people, is that once grants were provided, whether through RIRA's recommendation or before that, otherwise, the grant itself is still subject to audit.
Absolutely.
So so all these grants remain subject to audit and review in and of themselves.
Yes, and maybe one thing that I should make perfectly clear. What, if we do it, if RIRA did it, or RIRA does it, it is solely a recommendation. The board decides that this is a board decision. And you would have, and you have had the ability to look through any papers and any rating and any, and have any questions, just as like a budget or a piece of legislation. So that final approval is solely yours. Even our mechanism is solely a recommendation.
Okay.
Sorry.
Did you want to say something else?
Don't I always?
No.
Yes, if I can, I make my words.
Well, I turned 70 last week, so I can keep babbling. But now, thank you. But now I can behave like this, and it's okay because I'm 70.
You know, the 80 is when we can start. Okay. Having been part of RIRA for many years and having been there when they did the switch over from RIOC doing it all, where everybody marched in front of the RIOC board and made our presentations, and everybody moaned and groaned. You come down from Albany, you don't know what we're doing here, and then you decide what should happen with the money. We made a long, hard fight, which I think you'll remember, David, to get RIRA in the process of coming up with the recommendations. And I understand the big kerfuffle last year about some people liking the way it was dispersed and other people not. I understand the Not-for-Profit Revitalization Act. And I understand RIRA, it would be nice if RIRA could get some funds. However, I have put that out of my mind since we got that resolution from RIRA saying we don't care if we get any funds. So I guess my question is, isn't there a way we can stay in compliance with the law by having all the forms and everything filled out here just like we always did, but then have RIRA do the evaluations just like they've been doing in the past, as long as they agree they'll abide by all the rules and regulations, they agree that they won't take any funds, they'll sign the non-disclosures and everything that the state requires. Is that
Yeah, and we would have a few more additions, such as having public presentations.
Which pretty much
yeah.
RIRA meetings are the open meetings law, they're open to the public
But
anyway.
really have them like that the groups would have to present and
which they did,
yeah.
but they'd be publicized more, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it would be very, very public, and there would be public participation, and that could be determined later. Sean and Erica really do the bulk of this. Sean does this, sometimes he totally immersed in it. So he's more aware, and Eric are more aware of the nuts and bolts, and I think that could be accommodated, and I turn to them.
So we could still have RIOC making the recommendations, but there would just be some more hoops they'll have to jump through to cover the law, which
What
will
about,
have to
what
be,
about
sorry.
when RIOC itself asks for funds? I think that.
They can't.
They can't.
No, that
They
would
can't.
not happen.
And Mark, you mentioned a resolution, what was that?
There was a resolution from RIOC that, I don't know, well, I'll just read the bottom part.
Read it all, I never got it.
Oh, okay. Whereas past RIOC common councils have been entrusted by the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation to review qualified Roosevelt Island organizations' applications for public purpose funds, the RIOC Common Council formed and properly vetted a public purpose fund committee to conduct the review, and through the Common Council make a recommendation to RIOC as to the amount of public purpose funds to allocate to the applying organizations. Contrary to the belief of some prior and current common councilors, recent common councils have supported the functions of the Public Purpose Fund Committee, devoid of any expectations of or demands for compensation from RIOC. The Public Purpose Fund effort of the RIOC Common Council provides a service to the community and has generated goodwill within and to the community. Resolved that the RIOC Common Council overturns any prior demands for compensation for the Public Purpose Fund work. The RIOC Common Council will state clearly with proper tone and no demands in correspondence to RIOC its desire to continue reviewing applicants' desire for public purpose funds and to make recommendations to RIOC as to the amount of funding to applicants with full knowledge that the ultimate decision of funding rests with RIOC and its board of directors. I'm good with that. I gotta question this prior demands. I don't remember any prior demands. I remember some discussions about is there a way, is there some way
It might
that...
be a reference to some
Yeah,
discussion
who
of
knows?
voting machines
Yeah,
or
but I
something
don't know
like
if there's
that.
ever any demand made to us. We don't do well with
That's a
demands.
Since the fine hand of a clever lawyer.
Yeah, thank you. With proper tone and all,
Yes.
right?
But you see, you can't overlook the human factor. The human factor manifests itself. There's something called politics. Politics is in everything. This is a political, considered as a political, it's okay.
He's not hurt, he's good.
As a political statement, it is saying we in RIRA would like to maintain control of the process to the greatest degree possible, in return for which we give up any claim from the organization itself
For funds.
for funds.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm reading it right, if I'm hearing it right.
May I just add, and only the control of the funds is solely within the board's prerogative.
I mean, now let me give you remembering that, so I can speak a few minutes longer.
Sure.
Every year that the request or the allocation, the recommended funding allocation has come to us, I've had reservations about some of the recommendations, but maintaining the spirit in which the whole process was developed, I've never spoken about them. What I think personally about some of the requests should not have me meddling around and nitpicking the process. However, the human factor still pertains. And I can see a situation where the Residents Association, in its established purpose of communicating with governmental entities, sometimes has become in the past abusive in its language, in its choice of terms, distinct from whether they had a valid beef or not. RIRA members and committee heads have insulted members of our organization personally after doing long, hard jobs, and used personal statements of anger or contempt against board members, some seated at this table. And at some point, if we take too much control of the process, I can see the point where a board member or board members offended at the choice of language manifested by the Residents Association would say no, or some subsidiary organization or 501c3 or C4 would say, the hell with you, frankly. You can't talk to us like that, we're people. And completely turn down a vote. And we've managed not to do that, as RIOC has managed to keep its various members more on the straight and narrow path of applying valid criticisms. God knows we're not above criticism. And valid criticisms and valid complaints without resorting to street language.
So, I'm sorry, your point is that you
I'm not
like that it
sure.
stays with RIOC. Well, there, there's less chance of that happening, I think, if the recommendations stay within RIOC than if we take them back.
The meat of the process is still RIOC's.
Right, it always has been.
And it always
Right.
has been, and it will always continue. And I think everybody can agree to that. That we look to see and check to see whether it is for 501c, then
Right.
papers, etc., and all the regulatory aspect. The community aspect of it, that's where WERA would deal with.
Okay.
And we can help making it more transparent, more public, in being able to advertise it better for everyone.
To communicate with
To communicate, I mean, we will have the Everbridge, and if there's going to be a presentation, we can send out when that presentation is going to be.
My interest remains to keep as much of the recommendation process as possible pushed down towards the public as possible, or up towards the public as possible. I don't want RIOC to be in a position where we first of all budget a certain amount of money and then take our own decisions only, this would be one extreme, of who gets it. The public's money. We're perfectly justified in spending and allocating a certain amount for the public uses of the 501c3 organizations that ask for it. And the public should have as much input as possible. I'm not confident that the process that you have described continues to allow as much public input as possible. However, in that light, I believe we should continue with the process that you're promulgating today of developing the program further, with that one caveat. Let's try not to take things in our own hands so much as try to do the minimum that we must under the law and in line with our own corporate goals, allowing as much of the process to devolve to RIOC.
And I think Sean and Charlene are both saying that that's possible. We can keep that RIOC recommendation piece in there as long as RIOC complies with whatever the laws are now under the new not-for-profit revitalization
And
act.
Don, I think that you would speak to that as to we would be within a purview as accomplishing our fiduciary duty if in fact we kept the regulatory portion and there would be a recommendation by RIOC.
The way we proposed it would be fine, we covered that.
Okay.
The way we proposed it, as with the modifications that we discussed making in connection with the new act that's come out and increased transparency, I think what was originally proposed here was RIOC taking over what RIOC had done.
Right.
But I see the way things are flowing here is that
Yeah.
RIOC would still do it, but if RIOC did that with all those other strictures in place, it would not be a problem.
Okay. We have a couple of RIOC members back there. I saw one with her hand up.